Good morning, Rachel. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Fantastic. I got to tell you, from a deeper side of your podcast, I got to thank you because so much of my Native American studies and stuff like that has been based on that the elders want to share the story, but the younger generation doesn't want to listen to the story. And I think that when you jump into a project like this with In Trust, it really does open up the heart for people to say, you know what, there is a story, and Rachel is going to help lead that way.
Well, thank you for saying that.
What is the connection? I mean, there's a lot of people that do not know about this, and they're going. It's going to be shock and awe for a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think even just starting out on this story, it was a lot of shock and awe. It was, I think a part of me was angry that I had never learned about this history, and that it is kind of hard to teach yourself it sometimes, because for a long time there just wasn't a robust enough historical record. And I think, more recently that's being fixed. And I've spoken with a lot of Osage scholars and Osage leaders who have helped me kind of understand and grapple with this really complicated history. But certainly there's a lot of shock and awe there.
And the way that you guys went about this, I mean, it wasn't just suddenly all sitting there in a box that you found in some lonely corner. I mean, you guys had to carefully sift through not only the paperwork, but the rumors. What was true, what wasn't true.
Yeah, I mean, like any small community, you're going to have a lot of lore, a lot of rumors, things that have been said that maybe don't have a matching document to back it up, and to really figure out kind of what was true and what was not true took a lot of time. And I think that's because for so long it wasn't considered malfeasant for Native Americans to lose money. It was both by design and an unintended consequence. I think it depends on the situation. And so it required just piecing a lot of different histories together, a lot of different archives together to try to figure out what exactly happened to this place that had so much money for a period of time, and in a lot of cases wasn't able to hang on to it.
Wow. The way that you laid out this is such a work of art. It really is, in the way that journalism is growing forward. And the way that you laid out is that in each episode, you grow the story. I mean, we first learn about the Drummonds, and I would like to know how they got so much land. How did all of this happen? And that's the kind of things that you put inside this podcast, is that you allow us to feel the moment, and then we grow with the moment.
Well, I'm glad you think so. I think the story with the Drummonds is that there wasn't one strategy, there wasn't one acquisition. It was kind of this just this steady expansion that was ultimately made possible because of the way the U.S. government had at first divided the Osage Reservation into parcels, and then later came in with a lot of different policies that incentivized Native land loss while propping up non-Osage and non-Native ranchers and oilmen and others who were able to really take advantage of that system.
It's so much like something that we would see on Netflix or in a movie. I mean, because land, oil, family, wealth. I mean, you're there, living it right there, and hearing the stories of how it affected the community.
I think, it's really it's really shocking, I guess is the right word, to see how it affects this place today. How families that have all of this history live side by side and see each other at the grocery store and at football games, and how you reconcile with that past. And to be able to kind of talk to folks as they sort through their own feelings on this issue has been really interesting and eye-opening to me.
For listeners, the podcast is called In Trust. The Osage purchased a lay of land that was to be peaceful and giving. Because I do study Native American spirituality, and I live on a lay of land was once traveled on by Native Americans from the 1400s. I know what the land feels like. As you were there, did you feel the presence of that energy? Because we don't just stop in one area; we feel what's in that area, and then move through life.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Osage County over the last year and a year and a half. And, to me, what really struck me is just being around families who have so many stories and so much history in place, and learning about what their families meant to them and what the things that they grew up hearing and believing mean to them, and to see kind of the energy that a lot of young Osage citizens have moving forward to really expand their government, their sovereignty, their language, their culture. I mean, it's a really interesting place that is very vibrant right now, and that is really focused on the future.
Mm-hmm. The Drummond Store. Man, when I first heard about the Drummond Store, I thought, man, I would love to sit in the center of this place and just write, because if those walls could talk.
Yeah, it's a fascinating building too. It's fairly big. You can still see it in downtown Hominy, and yeah, I mean, you can see in the historical record, but just also talking to people who remember just how that store used to sell everything from blankets to hogs to caskets. I mean, it was, as the Drummonds themselves say, it was like the super Walmart of the time. And because of the way that these trading companies operated at the time, it was also this financial institution effectively, because at any given time, there was a ton of credit extended to people, which ultimately allowed a lot of these merchants to be put in a position of power.
Mm. So when you do this and you put the focus on the Osage, does the journalist in you want to go tell the story of the Native Americans in Montana who went through the Custer battlefields and things like that? Because like I mentioned before, that there are so many stories that are going to be lost if we don't have people like you, Rachel, to go out there and very calmly invite people to a podcast.
I think, yeah, there are a lot of Indigenous storytellers too who are really focused on this, and there's tremendous work being done in the This Land podcast, being one of them, and really focusing on kind of how this historical record and this history meshes with the present day, and these Supreme Court cases that we're learning about, and so I think there are lots of journalists out there who are really focused on making sure that these stories get told and that history is not erased.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't know that in 1864, Native Americans were outlawed in the state of Colorado. It's like, how does something like that happen? And so when you study, like even Burying My Heart at Wounded Knee, you sit there and you go, man, we've got to be able to preserve this history and make sure that we don't go back to this area again.
Yeah, and I think just having focused so much on the Osage Nation, I wanted to read And Still the Waters Run by Angie DeBow, and she focuses on other tribal nations in Oklahoma, but very similar situations and systems that were in play. And I think it really just was eye-opening to me to see just how big this was, and how the stories that I was learning about in the Osage Nation and that Osage citizens were teaching me were not at all unique, which is something that people have told me repeatedly. And so I would definitely recommend reading those books as well, because it just shows you just the breadth of this.
I think this is the first time, though, that I've ever heard of someone like Fred Drummond, saying that he has to take Osage money and make it work for them. It's like you're going to turn this into a business, but yet it does. You talk about that on the podcast.
And I think it definitely wasn't unique to the Drummond family. I mean, I've talked to folks who say that the whole business at the time in Osage County was the Osage Nation and making money off of the Osage Nation. And, sometimes it was direct with something like a trading company where you could, charge higher prices because of the wealth at the time. Sometimes it was indirect, like being able to borrow from Osage accounts because of these guardians that were appointed over them. But yeah, it was an entire business.
I got to give you a compliment here, and I can tell that you got really close with the people, and the reason why is because you have not used the word tribe like so many people do. You say nation. That makes my heart smile. It is a nation, and that's how they want to be recognized.
And I think that was something I learned very early on. I was an oil reporter from Houston. This is not something that I had a lot of experience covering, and so I have a lot of gratitude for the patience of early folks that I talked to, Indigenous scholars and Osage leaders who helped me learn the proper way to talk about this. And I'm still learning. I'm sure there are still things I'm messing up and that people are politely correcting me on. But I'm really appreciative of the people who really taught me how to talk about this, because I think a lot of times we as journalists do get it wrong.
Mm-hmm. Charlie's death. This was kind of I really got pulled into this because of the cost of it, and it's still, something worth talking about.
Yeah, I was fascinated to hear the story of Charles Wawrishi. I wasn't, expecting to come across a story like this. But, I think that was one benefit of just following the documents and going about it, starting with kind of the historical record and talking to families from there, because, as a journalist, we can't just publish what someone says. We have to have proof. And so seeing where the historical record led us and where family stories led us and trying to bridge the gap or that sometimes existed was a real challenge, but also a real opportunity to show how difficult it is for a lot of these families to reconcile that history and that past.
So between us, has a totem animal revealed itself to you during this process and the story building?
No, has not.
Wow, I'm shocked that the universe hasn't done that yet. Or either that, or it's there. It's just you're going to discover it, and it's going to be one of those things where you're going to go, oh boy, I truly was invited into something that is going to change people's lives on the other side of those speakers.
Well, I certainly hope that it at least makes people think a little bit. It's definitely made me think.
So you've got 5 episodes right now on iHeartRadio. How far does it grow? Because we're into this season of podcasting where it is all about the seasons and not about the number of episodes. But how far do we go into this?
Well, the 6th episode just came out today. That's really the last one that looks that is kind of rooted in the past. Episode 7 will come out next Tuesday, and episode 8 will come out the week after that. And because this is an evolving story, this is not just the Osage Nation doesn't just exist in the past, right? This is a government that is very much focused on the future, and you can see that in the actions that the Osage government is taking today. Just in the last week, the Osage Nation Congress unanimously passed a resolution to call on Oklahoma to repeal this so-called anti-critical race theory law. And so, that's incredibly relevant to the discussion about how we talk about history. And so I think we're looking at where the story is going to take us moving forward, because like I said, this is not just a historical endeavor. This is a past that ultimately affects the decisions that Osage and Oklahoma leaders are making today.
Man, such beautiful journalism. I hope I get to talk to you many more times in the future, Rachel. The door is always going to be open for you.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. You be brilliant today, okay?
All right, you too.